It's time for the Lord to come, I hear the people say. The stars of heaven are growing dim. It must be the breaking of the day. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. The night is almost come, the day is coming on. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. 2:12. The signs foretold in the sun and moon, in earth and sea and sky, aloud proclaim to all mankind, the coming of the Master draweth nigh. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. The night is almost gone, the day is coming on. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. It must be time for the waiting church to cast her pride away, with girded loins and burning lamps, to look ready for the breaking of the day. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. The night is almost gone, the day is coming on. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. 2:12. Go quickly out in the streets and lanes and in the broad highway, and call the maimed, the halt and blind, to be ready for the breaking of the day. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day. The night is almost gone, the day is coming on. Oh, it must be the breaking of the day.
Okay, excellent.
Good morning, Sabbath School. We won't have any regular Sabbath School classes this morning because Walt's going to bless us all day long. How many of you were here last night? Oh, good. Look at that. Most everyone here. I really enjoyed it. Walt has a way of keeping your attention. Some of the words he uses were too big for me, but I'm from the South. No, I'm really not. I'm from the Northeast. We want to make him feel welcome, and he's going to take the Sabbath School time now. And so some of you know that there's a fellowship lunch afterwards today, and we just want to make sure everyone comes and stays for the afternoon program. Also, there will be a love offering at the end of the program, of our midday program. And so we want to make sure that people are prepared for something, because Walt comes here and loves us, and we want to love him back. And so let's start with a word of prayer. Father God, it's the Sabbath. We thank you that you came here much before us, and you are opening our hearts now to an invitation to understand our bodies better so we can love you more. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Come up, Walt, and start.
Well, good morning, y'all. I don't know about y'all, but I had a real nice bed last night. It was nice. I enjoyed the rest. This morning, I'd like to look at God's systematic healthcare system. How many of you healthcare or have worked in healthcare. Is there a system? There is. And so I'd like to see, is there any type of a system in God's healthcare system? And let's take a look at that. So as we look at systematic healthcare system, in the allopathic market, we've got regulatory, we've got federal, state, local. I remember I was in North Carolina, and where I was, and at any time, 24 government agencies from local to federal can come and lock my doors. At any time, 24 different government agencies could lock the doors. And then you have accreditations, might be a joint commission, who knows who JACO is? Yes, absolutely. And other accreditations, you've got associations, the AMA, and every different discipline has their own associations. You have educations, you've got universities, then you have Con Ed. And currently, the thinking is in medicine is that when you graduate with your degree in medicine, if you don't have continuing education in 3 years, your knowledge is obsolete. And so you have to have continuing education to keep up with the different areas, whether it's pharmaceutical, whatever. And then you have caregivers, and this is just a pinch. You've got the acute, the subacute, the home health, you've got the hospice, the physician specialties, you've got pharmacies, therapies, you've got just so many disciplines that work together to make this happen. It is not one entity that makes healthcare happen. It's a team effort. It's like in firefighting. It's a team effort between, you've got your firefighters going in, you've got your officers, you've got your guy at the pump, you've got your rehab, you've got a whole system that makes that happen. Not just one person makes it happen. And if one person thinks they're doing everything, they're foolish. So, what does God's systematic healthcare system look like? Is God systematic? Is he? Just look out at night. Just get a microscope. God is very systematic. There can be, when we look at health, there can be true health and false health. And we'll look at that. Is there true education? And are we told there's true education? Yes. Morning, y'all. Is there true education? Therefore, there must be false education. So how do we identify true education? Is this a good way to find out true education? Yes, I think it is. True medical missionary work is of heavenly origin. It was not ordained by any person or lives. So as we look at medical missionary work, there must be true and there must be, therefore, false. Yes? Okay. And was it designed by an individual? Was it designed by John Harvey Kellogg? Was it designed by Ellen White? It says, it is heavenly origin. It was not ordained by any person who lives. So does that make it kind of highfalutin? Does that mean medical missionary work is highfalutin, God ordained? Absolutely. It's not what just this person over here said. It's of God. The true method for healing the sick is to tell them of the herbs that flow from the benefits of man. Scientists have attached large names to these simplest preparations, but true education will lead us to teach the sick that they need not call a doctor any more than they will call a lawyer. They can themselves administer the simple herbs if necessary. Do we need physicians? Absolutely we do. Absolutely. Who's a specialist in eye care in here besides this man sitting right here? Do we need doctors? Yes, we do. I fly a lot of people out for many reasons. And if I fly someone out, that means a whole food plant-based diet is not going to fix their problem. Would you agree? I mean, I fly a lot of wrecks out on I-40 that happen through the gorge. And they are very serious. What we spoke about last night is not going to fix that problem. They need surgery if they're going to live. We need doctors. We need that specialty of understanding anatomy, physiology. But the challenge is, I was listening to, who knows John Kelly? Anybody know John? John was at the time when I heard him, I was in New York at Camp Berkshire, which is the Greater New York Conference camp. And we were speaking to the church up there, and John was a professor at Loma Linda. And he said there that at least 80% of what happens on the floor, now y'all in healthcare know the floor is just your basic hospital rooms, not ICU, CCU, ED, emergency department. But on the floor, at least 80% of what happens on the floor, John said, can be treated in a lifestyle center doing what we talked about last night. And I believe that's what this is talking about. There are people who, when their nose starts running, run to a doctor. There is. To educate the human family that the doctor alone knows all the ills of infants and persons of every age is false teaching. And the sooner we as people stand on the principles of health reform, the greater will be the blessing that will come to those who would do true medical work. Again, she keeps using that word true. There's a work to be done in treating the sick with water and teaching them to take the most of sunshine and physical exercise. Thus, in simple language, we may teach the people how to preserve health, how to avoid sickness. This is the work our sanitariums are called upon to do. This is true science. And as I mentioned last night, for years as we've looked at this, the medical community has said, well, this is just, they didn't know back then. And so this is all they had. But we have, through what we have in pharmaceuticals and things today, it's far superior than this. But as I shared last night, as I read Harvard, as I read Cornell, as I read Mayo Clinic, Mayo's got some really good information out there, y'all. They really do, on lifestyle health. As I read from, Cleveland Clinic, they're teaching this right here about the importance of sunshine. There's a guy I was listening to last year, about a year ago. He was a professor at some Ivy League university, and his specialty is longevity. He's some PhD, and specialty is longevity. And I thought, this is interesting. I need to listen to this. And you know what he was teaching? The 7 items we talked about last night. He didn't get the 8th one, trusting God. But he was talking about this stuff. He was talking about water. He was talking about sunshine. He was talking about physical exercise, that you live longer. And so the excuse that this is just old medicine is not true anymore, unless you're just hanging on to the past belief. Because the cutting edge is teaching lifestyle health at these. Yes, we're still teaching pharmacology, but they are teaching lifestyle issues today. So I've got a good friend I went to SMC with. He owns a bunch of banks. And I was up at his place not long ago, and every time I go to him, he'll take me to one of his new banks or whatever, and he shows me, and he talks about this. He didn't know I talk about this when I'm out, but he's just passionate about this. True money. What is real money? Now, why do you think he wants to know what real money is as a banker? That's right, business. He doesn't want his staff to bring in false money. And so he teaches them when they come to work for him at any of his banks, he doesn't even show them false money. He doesn't even show it to them. All he shows them is that. And then when they know this, they then know false money. A number of years ago, I went to the bank and took a deposit. And the next morning, the banker called me, and she said, "Walt," she said, "I need you to bring me $100. Bring it up here." I said, "Why?" She said, "You brought me a fake one yesterday." I said, "Ain't no way." I said, "I used the little pin thing on it." That little thing marks it yellow. And she said, "Walt, just come up here and bring me $100. And I'm just an old country boy. She was an old country gal. She was the over the bank. So I went up there and I said, okay, tell me what happened. So she shows me the bill. And I said, I used the pen. She says, throw the pen away. She says, there is something in every household. We're on the internet, so I'm not going to say what it is. She said, there is something in every household that you just put on that, and when it dries, the pen doesn't work. Throw that pen away. Do not use it again. I said, so what do I do? She says, what you do is you go up, and she says, see his shoulder up there, his right shoulder? She says, take your fingernail and scratch on it. She says, so far counterfeiters can't do that. If it's rough. And she says, see that little blue line there? She says, take you a pen, a writing pen or a toothpick, and stick it in that little piece where the blue goes underneath. She says, it'll go up underneath that. The counterfeit can't do that yet. And she says, yes, you can hold it up and see in the yellow part over here, you see an image there that you can barely see that face in there. Hold it up to the window. She says, counterfeiter can't do that neither. So I started doing that. I went back to the office and I threw the pen away. 2 years ago. I still use the same bank. I went to the bank and I took a couple $100 bills that some folks had brought me for buying stuff. Girl run it through this machine. And it said, she brought one back. She said, this is fake. I mean, it was like I'd committed a sin or something. This is fake. I said, no, ma'am, it's not. It's real. Well, she was a new girl. And she says, no, it's fake. The machine said it's fake. I said, no, ma'am, it's not. Go use that other machine. Try it on that machine. So she went over there and it was real. She says, how did you know? I said, well, the banker I said back about 18 years ago, who was the banker here, I said, she taught me how to identify real money. And that lady's now dead. She died. But I said, and so I showed the girl how to tell. And I said, this is real money, and this is how you tell. And so if you look at money, there's a way of telling what's real and what's not real. How else can you tell if something's real? Can you tell by the Bible if it's real or not real? There's a preacher out in Washington. He's from Cuba. He's a pretty cool guy. And he's I like down-to-earth people. I'm just down-to-earth person. And so he said his church members are saying, Pastor, can we do this at church? And he go, well, they're doing it up the other church. He said, well, let's look. He says, he gets his Bible out and he goes, no, can't do it. It says it right here, we can't do it. Just calm, Nope, it says right here, can't do it. But preacher, they're doing it up there at the other Adventist church. But this says we can't do it. No, we ain't doing it at this church. And he says, folks will say, preacher, can we do this? And he'll say, well, just a minute, let's look. And he says, we can do that. It says it right here. This tells you true or non-true. This is the true. So if it's not here, it's the false. Would you agree? Yeah. So if you're wanting to learn true medical missionary work, these are good. This book changed my career. It's interesting how people are. You can have people who are nice and you can have people who are mean as a striped snake. And I went to this church and this head elder was a nice man. And we didn't have a pastor, so it was a lay-led church. And he said, I was working in regular healthcare. He said, Walt, he said, would you mind preaching? Oh, I'd never preached before. I said, no. I said, I've never preached before. But, if God tells you. Hello, my friend. If God tells you to do something, do you need to do it? So I said, okay, let me pray about it. So I told him, I said, okay, I'll do it. What do I do? He said, well, this book here. He said, could you preach on what that book says? So, yeah, I can. So I read the book. You got to read the book so you can preach on it. I read the book, and he gave me a couple months to prepare. And read the book, preached on it. And then as I worked in my head, and I saw what we were doing at work and what I'd read in that book and what I saw at work, what I saw in that book, they just didn't jive. and I changed careers. True and false. This is the first book I read that she wrote on health. Very interesting book. Who's read these two books? If you want to understand brain function, go read these two books. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, or Book 1 and Book 2, Volume 1, Volume 2. Excellent books on brain function, character. Excellent. In this book, there's this lady I knew in New York City, and we were on a conference call one time, and she said, I was flying from New York City out west, and she says, I got on the plane, and she's got money, and she's sitting in first class. And she says she sat down, first class goes in first. She sits down. She's sitting next to the window. There's a guy on the aisle. She sits down as, she's, getting ready to situate to go fly. And she notices he picks this book up, and he starts to read it. And she says, oh, you're a Seventh-day Adventist. He goes, no. Oh. You know who he was? He was Dr. Oz. Interesting, huh? Now, this is a great book, Testimonies for the Physicians and Helpers of the Sanitarium, pH 100. It's an excellent, excellent little book. First, in true health, what is our mission? And as I mentioned last night, API, Assess, Plan, Implement, Evaluate, and then in North Carolina we add mission on it, MAPI, mission, then Assess, Plan, Implement, Evaluate. Mission's big to me because in corporate America they taught us mission drives everything. If it's not in the mission statement, you don't do it. When I was at UT, I remember one of my professors in finance, he worked for Coca-Cola some. And he said in Coca-Cola will their board meets once a year, and they determine their mission statement once a year. And they then decide what's their mission 20 years out, and then make their 5, 3, 2 year, 1 plan based on that. And if you want to do anything in the middle of the year that's not in that mission, it doesn't get done. Now, if you want to do it, then it can make its way up to the board, and they can then change their mission out there, but it's got to be in the mission statement. Mission's huge. So what's our mission? We should ever remember that the object of the medical missionary work is to point sin-sick men and women to the man of Calvary, who taketh away the sin of the world. That is the object. It is not reversing diabetes. It is not reversing strep throat. It is to point the sin-sick soul to Christ. Now, who's the sin-sick souls? Everybody. Y'all sin-sick souls? Yeah, we are. We're not perfect. All of us are. But that is the mission, and we must remember that. Christ stands before us as the pattern man, the great medical missionary, an example for all who should come after. His love, pure and holy, blessed all who came within the sphere of its influence. His character was absolutely perfect, free from the slightest stain of sin. He came as an expression of the perfect love of God. Now let me share something real quick. There is two words in the universe. Everything boils down in the universe to two words. It used to be one word, love. And then Lucifer brought in another word called self. That's the two words, love and selfish. Now, several years ago, psychology folks in America, they decided that when people did this, people who do that? Taking pictures of themselves, selfies? Well, they decided that if you do it more than 3 times a day, you just ain't right. Now, y'all from around here understand what that means, right? Okay, if you're move-ins, you'll learn it. And they came up with a diagnosis, an IDC-10 code for this, for people who take selfies more than 3 times a day. It's called self-itis, inflammation of self. That is a true diagnosis. It was about 4 or 5 years ago when that took place. Satan was the first that had self-itis. God is love. Satan is self. So if you have self, who are you following? Following. If you have love, who are you following? So it says here, He came, who? Christ. Christ came, He came as an expression of the perfect love of God, not to crush, not to judge and condemn. Do we know medical missionaries that crush and condemn? Absolutely we do. Mean as a striped snake. There are some people supposed to be good people, and they're just plumb mean. They are. If you don't do it just like they do it, you're doing it wrong. There's a lot of ways to do stuff. He came as an expression of the perfect love of God. That's the first thing, to share as love. Not to crush, not to judge and condemn, but to heal every weak, defective character, to save men and women from Satan's power. So if we are to take on Christ's character as a medical missionary, we should what? We should have perfect love to people. We shouldn't crush people. We shouldn't judge people. We shouldn't condemn people, but to heal every weak, defective character, to point people to Christ. Would you agree? It is true. It is the divine plan that we shall work as the disciples worked. Physical healing is bound up with the gospel commission. Physical healing is bound up with the gospel commission together. In the work of the gospel, teaching and healing are never to be separated. I come off the mountain. I live up on a mountain in a little cabin. And if I come up off the mountain, I get toned out to a call on I-40, and I come off the mountain in a fire truck, and I've got my fire helmet on. But let's say the car's not on fire. The car's all crushed up. Do I just stand there and wait for rescue squad to come? No, I don't. I put on my rescue helmet. No, I don't change helmets, but you know what I'm saying. And I get out the jaws of life, and we rip that car open, and we get that person out. Now the person's bleeding to death. Do I say, I'm going to wait on EMS to get here. They'll patch him up. No. Steve and I took EMS together. I put on my EMS hat, and we take care of that person from a medical standpoint. Or let's say it's a hazmat situation. Do I say, I'm going to wait on a hazmat to get in here out of Morristown or Jefferson City or out of Asheville? No. I put on my hazmat hat. We deal with it right then. People will say, well, he's the preacher and he's the medical person. As I sit with people at times, people will say, and I'm talking to them, it might be whatever the problem is. It might be their toenails hurting. I don't know. But we're sitting there and we're talking, we're going through their health issues, and out of the blue, why do you go to church on Saturday? Because I close on Sabbath. And they don't like that because they come into town on Sabbath. Why do you close on Saturday? Well, I tell you what. Let me see her preacher's number. No, he's on vacation right now. I'll get you my preacher's number, and he'll be back in a couple weeks. He likes taking a month at a time on vacation. But I'll get you his number, and when he gets back, he'll answer that question. Is that how it works? No. The Holy Spirit put it in that person's mind right then to say, why does that man go to church? Why does he close on Saturdays? Why does he go to church on Saturday? I need to put that hat on and say, let me share with you. Here's why I go to church on Saturday. Do you see what I'm saying? Or a preacher who's out there gone to someone's house and says, can I pray with you? Oh, I don't feel good. I'm feeling terrible awful. I just don't feel like you come talking to me today. Well, what's wrong? Well, I just got me a terrible headache. Well, I'll come back whenever you feel better. No. Well, can I help you with your headache? There's some things I found out you can do for a headache. Do you see how simple it is? And yes, I'm talking simple, because it is simple. See, if it wasn't simple, all of us couldn't do it. Teaching and healing are never to be separated. That's not just my job. I can't do that. No, it is our job. I can see in the Lord's providences that the medical missionary work is to be a great entering wedge whereby the diseased soul may be reached. Who's ever split wood? So you got your wedge and you set it on a piece of wood here. You just set that on there and you just tap it once and you come back here and you hit it as hard as you can. Some people might be able to do that. I can't do that. So you set it here and you tap it and then a little harder tap it and then a little harder tap it a few times. And then you can kind of get it in there. And then you come back and you can wallop it. There are people who think they can just come up here and just wallop it the first time. I remember before I came to I was working at a place in Virginia, and it was a lifestyle program, and I remember this poor boy came in one morning and we did devotions with our patients. It was the last day, they were getting ready to go home. It was an 18-day program, and he decided that he needed to share the 18 fundamental beliefs at Seventh-day Adventist Church in about a 20-minute time period. You can just absorb so much. And you start slow, you become friends and work with people. It's an entering wedge. Over time, it works. I was at Walmart the other night. Mary Lou needed something at the store. So we went over to Walmart after work. And we were going through the produce section getting something. And this black boy, he says to the other black boy with him, he says, "That's my doctor." I'm not his doctor. But when he was a little boy, about 19 years ago, he had a lot of problems psychologically, a lot of stress and depression, real bad. And his mama brought him to me. And for about a year, he would come in. And I'd work with him. And he's good now. He's fine. He's doing well. But as I worked with him over time, friends, you see how it works? And he trusts me now. You can't just walk. How many from here? Plumb from here? Y'all two plumb from here. Can you just walk in and tell somebody what to do around here? No. Pardon? No. You ain't from around here. Why are you coming to tell me what to do? Yeah, that's how they are. You have to build trust over time. If you want to start a farm, I remember back in the late 1950s, UT taught my dad when he went to UT and took agriculture. If you start a farm in this neck of the woods, you don't come in there and build a big old barn. You don't buy a brand new tractor. Don't buy a brand new pickup truck neither. Get you an older truck. As you go along, and if you're doing better, go ask the neighbor what truck they recommend. Ask a neighbor what tractor they recommend. Because you come in there and you build a brand new barn and a brand new tractor and a brand new truck, he's trying to show me out. Does he think he's better than me? I don't know if it's still that way here, but it used to be that way here. You work with people. You don't come in here and just tell people what to do. You become friends with them. They then become to trust you because you become friends. Friendship evangelism is how to, at least in this neck of the woods, and I find most anywhere I've ever been, when I go to Africa, do you think I can just go there and tell them what to do? Not at all. They don't know me. I have to spend time with them, Become friends with them. Go to their place. Talk to them. Talk to them about their kids. Talk to them about what they do for a job or what they do. It's an entering wedge. And you just don't go smash it the first time. But it works. So God's systematic healthcare system, how does it work? It starts right here. The plan is it starts in this building right here, the church. The church is the hub of the medical missionary work. It's the command center of the medical missionary work for this area. The medical missionary work should be a part of the work of a work. The medical missionary work should be a part of the work of every church in our land. I was in Covington, North Carolina, or outside of Covington, and Covington had a little church. It had 4 members, and the youngest was 70-some years old. 4 members, the youngest 70-some years old. Was their excuse? We're too old and we don't have enough. It says every church, and they drove to church so they can get out. Every church should have a part of the medical missionary work. This should be the command center that does the teaching and does the coordination. Unfortunately, we don't have that in every church, and therefore we have to have individuals take that role individually. But this is a huge component of that. This is the powerhouse of the medical missionary work. It is. It's the training center. It's the organization center. A gospel minister will be twice as successful in his work if he understands how to treat disease. Continually increasing light has been given to me on this subject. A minister of the gospel who is also a medical missionary who can cure physical ailments is a much more efficient worker than one who cannot do this. His work as a minister of the gospel is much more complete. How can I be a fire chief and never been a firefighter? Can I be an effective fire chief if I've never been a firefighter? No. How do I know what it's like inside that burning house? How do I know if it's safe to send someone up in that attic? How do I know if it's safe? The other day we had a car fire, a pickup truck fire. And so I had guys working it, and they did a great job, knocked it out, but let me tell you what, I was there checking it. I took my glove off. I know we ain't supposed to do that, but that's the way Dwayne taught us there at Tricom. I took my glove off. I was checking the areas to making sure it's plumb out, because I don't like rekindles. I don't want them. And so I was checking it out, making sure my boys had put that fire out right. If I had never been a firefighter, could I have done that? Would I know how to do that? No. And so how can a pastor who doesn't know medical missionary work lead the training center? One, he doesn't have a passion for it. Second, he don't know what to do. You will never be ministers after the gospel order till you show a decided interest in medical missionary work, the gospel of healing and blessing and strengthening. All through California, as well as other parts of America, work must be done that has not yet been accomplished. The medical missionary work must be recognized. Those who go forth as ministers of the gospel should be intelligent on this subject, not just have academic knowledge. Oh, I've heard of that. No, intelligent of. You know it. You thoroughly know it. Those ministers who, after many years' experience, have no true appreciation of medical missionary work should not be appointed to preside over our churches, for they are not walking in the light of the truth for this time. I don't know where that one went. That just got left out somewhere. Ministers who have not heeded the light God has given upon health reform should not be placed in charge of workers who love the truth and appreciate health and temperance reform in all its bearing. For what help can such be to the church or workers? So if this is to be the medical missionary training ground, how can those above coordinate and help this? Does that make sense? That's just called horse sense. Y'all know what horse sense is? Common sense. It just makes common sense. So we have the church, which is the command center. Then we have the members. We have come to a time when every member of the church, who are members of this church? Of the Seventh Adventist Church? Oh, that's you. We have come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of medical missionary work. That was written not last week, so that's been a while. The world is a laser house filled with victims of both physical and spiritual disease. Everywhere, people are perishing for a lack of knowledge of the truths that have been committed to us. The members of the church are in need of an awakening. Do y'all believe that? That they may realize their what? Responsibility to impart these truths. How many people do we come in contact that are sick, that have health issues, that we could have used the medical missionary work to help point them to Christ? And we missed it. I had this lady come in one time, and I was sitting down talking to this fella. He was actually the sheriff of L.A. County. And he had come in, and he was retired, and he was having issues with a health issue. And Mary Lou comes up to me, and she says, I need your help. Normally, she don't pull me away from someone like that, but I said, okay, excuse me just a minute. So I walk up over to by the cash register, and this lady is squalling. Now, y'all not from around here may not know what squalling means, but it means crying good. And I said, ma'am, what's wrong? And she says, my husband, we just left the doctor's office, and he's a 10 out of 10 in severity. Now, I don't know what the physician was using as his markers, but y'all know what MRSA is? MRSA? He had the type that vancomycin doesn't do anything to, so it was vancomycin resistant. And he told her he was a 10 of 10 in severity, and he was going to die. And so she had gone over to the CVS pharmacy across the street, and she was begging them, crying and asking them for a drug to help him. And she said they told her that everything had been used. Nothing else would work. And they said, go see Walt across the street. So she came across the street. See why it's important to get to know people around you? To make friends with you, people around you? Not to alienate people around you? Help people around you? So they sent her over to me. And I said, ma'am, what your husband has is very serious. I do have something that works on regular MRSA, but I've never used it on vancomycin. It's vancomycin resistant. That's serious stuff. And she's just crying. I said, ma'am, does your husband believe in God? Nope. I said, ma'am, do you believe in God? She goes, nope. I said, well, I have something that I've used for regular MRSA. Would you be interested in trying it? And she said, mister, I'm willing to do anything to keep my husband alive. I said, okay. So I went and got it, came back up to her, and I said, ma'am, this does not heal. It is not going to heal your husband. I said, but God can. Do you mind that Mary Lou and I pray that God will bless this? And she said, I told you, I don't care what you do. I want my husband to live. So Mary Lou and I prayed. She prayed. I prayed that God would bless that and her husband be healed. Woman takes it and she leaves. 1 week later, she comes back in the store all smiling. She says, we just come back from the doctor. He's a 4 out of 10. And again, I don't know what quality indicator he's using. And she left, gone. 2 weeks later, now a total of 3 weeks later, she comes back in. She says, she is happy. She says, it's gone. It is gone. There is no more MRSA, vancomycin resistant MRSA. It's plumb gone. And she was so happy. And she says, on her own, she says, my husband now believes in God. We don't stop there. She's gone. So 3 years ago, I'm working at the herb cabinet. And I got a herb cabinet. It's about as big as that wall back there almost. And I'm standing there working at it, doing some things, and the lady comes up to me and she says, now that was back in 2005, that woman came in. This lady comes in 3 years ago, and she says, my husband is trying to quit smoking. You got anything for smoking? I said, yes, ma'am. Get you 3/4 of a cup of lemon juice, 1/4 cup of honey, put 1/3 of a teaspoon of peppermint essential oil in it, shake it up good, take a nip anytime you get a hankering. And she goes, okay. Starts walking out the door. I said, ma'am, but don't forget the most important part. And she says, what is the peppermint or the lemon? I said, no, ma'am, pray. She says, you don't remember me, do you? I said, no, ma'am, I don't. And so she steps back in, and she's standing exactly where she had come in 2005. And she starts telling the story. I said, oh, yes, I remember you, ma'am. And I got a question to ask you. One, same husband? Yes. Does your husband still believe in God? Oh, yes, she says. And I said, I didn't get to ask you something when you were here, when you left that other time. Do you now believe in God? She goes, oh, yes, I believe in God. I mean, you could tell she loved God in the way she said it. And she said, and it all happened right here. And I said, so what are you doing church-wise? What are you doing for God? She says, oh, we're very involved in the Lincoln Baptist Church. And she says, we're doing so much. And she says, I got to go. And she left. I hadn't seen her again. I don't know what God has for her. But do you see where you can miss people? If I had just said, I got something that might work, you want to try it? And God may have blessed. But she would have credited that stuff. That stuff did not heal her husband. God healed her husband. They were atheists. They didn't believe in God because of that one event. See the people we've lost? The ability to touch their hearts and show them Jesus? And this is the tool Jesus has given us to use? The members of the church are in need of an awakening that they may realize their responsibility to impart these truths. These truths is the medical missionary work which points the sin-sick soul to Christ. Christ commits to his followers an individual work, a work that cannot be done by proxy. Ministry to the sick and the poor, the giving of the gospel to the lost is not to be left to committees or organized charities. Well, that's just the help committee's job, church. No, that's not what it says. Individual responsibility, individual effort, personal sacrifice. I ain't got time. Personal sacrifice is the requirement of the gospel. Every person. But you know, I'm not that smart. I don't have all those abilities. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a whatever. It says every member. Now, I got guys on the fire department that they don't have the ability to be firefighters. They might be too old. They may be someone that they just don't want to run inside of a burning building. That's just not normal. But yet, there's things for them to do on the fire department. I got a lady who no way could she be a firefighter. She just doesn't have the physical ability to be a firefighter. But you know what? She's been a dog handler for years. She's got a bloodhound. And she goes and finds people for me when they're lost. Children, geriatrics. Do I need her on the fire department? Is she part of the team? Absolutely she is. I have people who don't have those abilities to be a firefighter or the desire to be a firefighter, but they're on my rehab team. I have guys that they just don't have the desire, but you know what? They're a mechanic for me. So there's a lot of things that they do. Maybe they're not up front teaching a class, but can they man that booth back there when people come in and they take names? Can they cook food for the cooking school? Can they do a lot of that back work that needs to be done so that the person who's doing the presenting can spend time on preparing for that? Could they be a person who goes out and maybe they're not an upfront person, but they don't mind to go to someone's house and check on them? There's something for all of us. But what about young'uns? Is there something young'uns can do? I was teaching a class down in McDonald back in 2004. And it was at McDonald Church, McDonald Roads, I guess it's called. And we did a medical missionary training program to kids from kindergarten to high school. It started Sunday, it finished Friday. I remember Wednesday morning, a lady comes in and she said, I need to tell you what happened last night with my young'un. She says, I picked him up Tuesday night, went home, I had a terrible, awful headache, and went home. My daughter knew it. She's a kindergartner. And she told me to sit down in the kitchen, sit down on a chair. She went and got a basin of hot water. She got a basin of ice water. She got 2 washcloths. She got some water. We talked about it last night. She says, my migraine went away. A kindergartner. Kids can do things. Absolutely. Every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. So it's not just academia, and that's the challenge. Oh, yes, I've heard of the 8 laws of health. But can you do a revulsive treatment? If a neighbor needs a revulsive treatment because they have pneumonia, do you have the ability to do that? Practical, actually do it? Yes, I know about vehicles. When I was in academy, I took shop class, but can I tear an engine apart? Well, yeah, I did my VW Bug, but no way could I do it today. I don't have that practical knowledge. I got a fire truck right now that I need the engine rebuilt. I don't know how to do that diesel engine. But as medical missionary work, every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. Every person, that's every member of the church. It is essential both to understand the principles involved in the treatment, the physiology, it is essential to understand both the principles involved in the treatment of the sick and to have a practical training that will enable one rightly to use this knowledge. So do you have the knowledge physiologically, how that process works? So do you know how an engine works? The combustion part of that. So do you have understand the physiology engine, but can you then tear it apart and rebuild it? Well, the same thing is true in medical missionary work. Do you understand how a certain treatment may work for this specific problem, but do you know then how to do the treatment? And that's what we're supposed to know. The schools. Our church schools are ordained by God to prepare the children for this great work. Here, children are to be instructed in the special truths for this time in practical missionary work. They are to enlist in the army of workers to help the sick and the suffering. Children can take part in the medical missionary work, and by their jots and tittles can help to carry it forward. I was in a health ministries meeting last Sunday night, and we were trying to figure out where is our church going. But do you know who was supposed to be doing it? The only people that were allowed to get up here and do it? If you're a medical doctor, if you're a nurse, or a nutritionist. Kids can do it. Every one of us can do it. That's what this says. A practical knowledge of the science of human life is necessary in order to glorify God in our bodies. It is therefore the highest importance that among the studies selected for childhood, physiology should occupy the first place. I remember when I was a boy and kids would come and say, Walt, you want a drink? You want to go get something to drink? And I go, no, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist and our church doesn't let us to drink. Well, did that keep me from drinking? Yes, but was that the right answer? No. Or Walt, you want to go do some drugs? No, I can't do drugs. I belong to the Seventh-day Adventist Church and they don't believe in doing drugs. Did it keep me out of drugs? Yes. But was it the right answer? No. I should have told little Johnny, I don't drink because I don't want my liver being green. Sally, I don't do drugs because I don't go to jail. Or I don't want to kill my brain cells. And you can educate. You understand, these children can understand physiologically why they need to do certain lifestyles. Not just because Daddy told them not to or the church told them not to. They need to understand physiology so they can make that decision themselves. And they can also help other young'uns. There's a message regarding health reform to be done in every church. There's a work to be done in every school. Neither principal nor teacher, boy, this is just like the preacher thing. Neither principal nor teacher should be entrusted with the education of the youth until they have a practical knowledge of this subject. What subject? Health reform. Some have felt at liberty to criticize and question, that happens, and find fault with health reform principles of which they knew little by experience. So we could keep going on and on and on. But let me show you how this model works. It's real simple. It's got to be simple because God wants every one of us to do it. So where's the headquarters? The church. So where do the members learn? The church. They also learn at home. You can do continuing education at home. For the fire department, if you're a good firefighter, yes, we have training. We're required to do training. If your insurance rating, your fire insurance rating by ISO is dependent on if your local fire department does training. If your local fire department does not have good training, your ISO rating is worse. The number goes up. The lower the number, the better it is, the better the insurance. So the higher the number, the more money you pay for fire insurance. The lower the number, the less money you pay for fire insurance. That fire department has to have training. Can you imagine us getting off that fire truck and there's a car all crumbled up and the guys go, "Where's that manual? How do you use that Jaws life?" No, we better know how to do it. We've got to know how to do it. In a good fire department, their guys go home and they do their own reading of fire literature. So it starts here at the church, but the members. So here's how it works. Let's say, where do folks around here work? They go to Chattanooga or they work around here? Go in Chattanooga? Oh, work here. So where do they work here? Where's a big place to work here? Well, there's probably not much around here big, but do y'all have factories here? What? Pardon? Factories. Okay, give me a name. What do they make? What does some of the factories make here? Siding? Siding that goes on a house? Okay, so let's say that you're working at the factory that makes siding. And Henry, who works along with you there at the factory making siding, he's got blood pressure problems. And you say, "Henry, you want to go get something to eat?" You take Henry to the local restaurant, a church member's restaurant. And so you say, and so you go out to eat, and he goes, "Boy, that's good food." And you say, "Well, where do you get food like that?" And on the way back, you stop by, you drive by the health food store, and you say, "There's a health food store you can buy that kind of food." Huh? Where do you learn to make food like that? Well, we do classes in that room back over there that teaches how to make healthy breakfasts, teaches classes on how to make healthy dinners, how to make. We learned last night that dinner's a noon meal for y'all that weren't here. How to make healthy Thanksgiving meals, how to make healthy holiday meals, how to make healthy picnics. They even do classes on how to shop for food. Really? They have classes on how to make healthy smoothies. Now, who isn't going to go to a healthy smoothie class? That's an easy class. Oh, okay. And you start working with him a little bit, and he says, "But you know, my doctor said I'm going to have high blood pressure the rest of my life. There ain't everything you can do." I said, "But," and so you say to Henry, "Henry, I know this guy. He's got a clinic over here, and he's a doctor, and he's found a way you can reverse high blood pressure." Really? when I went to Alaska outside of Anchorage, there's this little lady, literally, she's about this tall. She looks like a 12-year-old. And she's a physician out of Canada. And literally, you'd think she was a 12-year-old if she was walking in here. And she does lifestyle medicine in their community. And their church members point people to her. And she teaches them how to use herbs and how to do lifestyle to reverse their high blood pressure, how to reverse their diabetes. And so you send them over there. And here's how it works. You get Henry an appointment to go see Doc John. Now, Doc John doesn't say, well, now you're my patient. He's kind of like an orthopedist. See, an orthopedist does not do physical therapy. He refers out to the physical therapist. Now, the physical therapist does the eval, sends it into the doc. The doc goes, yep, that's what I want you to do. And the physical therapist is the one who does the PT, not the orthopod. And so the church member, who's the doctor, says, okay, you keep coming back and see me, but Henry is the medical missionary. And he's going to help you reverse that high blood pressure. And so Henry brings him to these classes, works with him, helps him on a program, takes him, they go to the restaurant, takes him to the health food store, brings him. Do you see how that works? But let's say Henry just doesn't have the willpower. So you send him over to where? Wildwood or Uchee. Now, one of the biggest problems at the lifestyle centers is when you work with a person and they're getting really good and they're doing well, and you send them back home to a community, there's nobody to support them there. Here's how it's supposed to work. Uchee or Wildwood calls up the admissions director at the headquarters here and says, listen, we got a person who works over at the vinyl siding factory, and they're one of our patients here. You know anybody who works over there? Oh yeah, Henry works over there. Can you hook them together? Yeah. Have you got a physician? Yeah, we got a physician at the clinic. Can we send you the discharge papers over to the clinic? What we've started at Uchee or Wildwood. So Uchee and Wildwood, the lifestyle center, then refers over to your clinic, which has your Adventist doctor. And then they pick them up, and then Henry is now the medical missionary that starts working with them. Does that make sense? That's how it works. Yes, we've got a CSA here. What's a CSA? Y'all know what CSA is? It's not Confederate States of America. A CSA is a gardening group. You ever seen people who do gardening things? And y'all have those around here? And so let's say that you have a business that you grow vegetables. And people in the community come for $70 a week. They can get a box of whatever you're growing that week. CSAs are great. And you can give them stuff right out of the garden that's biologically grown. It's tremendous. Schools, that's to train our kids. Our sanitariums are where to send people to refer people from. Our schools, that's places to go and send our youth off to be nurses and doctors. We need nurses and doctors. Our health food manufacturing. But do you see how it works together? It's a system. But it starts in this building right here. Now, if this building chooses not to start it, it's still y'all's responsibility to be a medical missionary. And you go do it from your home. So I think our time is done. Any questions on that? Just this process, not in general questions, but on this right here.
Does this model, does it conflict with Adventist Health Services? How do they look at medical missionaries today, and is there any resistance to that?
Good question. Depends on where you are. In general, yes. Yes. But that wasn't in the guidelines of what we're supposed to do. It didn't ask if it was in conflict. It said to do it. I think you get where I'm coming from. God expects things out of us as between us, and when He tells you to do it, you need to do it. If He says you're to be a medical missionary, then you need to be a medical missionary. Doesn't mean you have to stir up a hornet's nest. Just go do what He told you to do. Other questions?
Thank you. I had a tenant, and she's disabled, and I met her, knew her for about a year. I brought her into my house, and I did everything I possibly could to show Christ to her medically, naturopathically, because she's not a Christian, not an Adventist. Don't want to have to do church. But she was very resistant. She never wanted to be open to nothing, never appreciated anything. So I had to evict her eventually because of her character, not Christ-like. No matter how I tried to preach to her in a loving way, so she showed her true flying colors. And when I went to her room to clean it, because she didn't do anything, I saw she was alcoholic with all kind of different liqueurs, into the dark web with all kind of satanic videos and games. And I figured she's too far gone with Satan being possessed in her spirit to be open to God's, what should I say, Holy Spirit. So some people, you can't really force them. You can't help them because they doesn't want to help. They're too far gone. So all you could do is pray for her, you know? That's all I can say. You can't reach everybody.
Praying is the most important. And God can break barriers down. But let me share something. I belong to a church over in North Carolina in the mountains. And there was a couple who moved to our church. He worked in Asheville. She homeschooled. And just a nice little couple. And they would take in a person for 1 month to come live with them. They had health issues. They didn't even do anything highfalutin. All that person just did was lived with them. Whether the person had diabetes, heart issues, stress, whatever. It wasn't anything with major acuity, but just basic issues, Syndrome X stuff. And they'd eat breakfast with them. They'd eat dinner with them. They would have worship with them. They'd go outside and work in their garden with them. They'd go out and take walks with them. They'd go to bed on time. There was no TV in their house. They lived out where there was no cell service at the time. They just lived with them. And guess what would happen by the end of 30 days? Their health was significantly better. Because they just lived with a family that followed those laws we talked about last night. Now, again, it wasn't high acuity, but a lot of people have health issues that is not high acuity, and they shared the gospel with those people. It can be that simple, y'all. That simple.
Okay, if there's no more questions, what I'd like to do is, because some of us have been here for about an hour and a little bit, let's take a 5-minute break in between church and Sabbath school and church. If you need to use the restroom, go ahead. Let's try to be back in here in about 5 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Good morning.
I appreciate you so much. I've been watching you for the longest.